was scared. Yes, I agree. I do agree that he was probably terrified for his life. So if that is the case, it's also quite feasible that he put up money to get Pac.
September 7th, 1996, Las Vegas. Shakur's rolling down the strip in a black BMW, fresh from the Tyson fight, windows low, music blasting, the night alive with energy. But in seconds, the beat of the city turns to chaos. Shots ring out, lights flash, and his ride is ambushed at a red light. Just 6 days later, headlines screamed he was gone forever. But what if that was never the real story? What if behind the hospital curtains and police statements, something else was happening? Something hidden, twisted, and quietly unfolding while the world mourned. For years, rumors whispered, stories clashed, but now new details are starting to crawl out of the shadows. Fast forward almost 30 years later, July 2023. Before sunrise, a quiet neighborhood in Henderson, Nevada, wakes to flashing lights and armored trucks. Agents in full tactical gear storm the home of Dwayne P. Davis. The air's thick with tension as investigators tear through the place, snatching up hard drives, bullets, and one eerie piece of evidence, a worn-out Vibe magazine cover with Shakur's face staring coldly from the front. Right beside it, Kef D's own memoir, Compton Street Legend, sitting bold and unhidden. This wasn't just a random raid on an old street figure. No way! The feds made it clear. The world's most infamous drive-by was no longer being treated like some gang hit. Something much bigger was in play. It wasn't just being seen as another crime anymore, it was being treated as a full-blown conspiracy. And that cracked open the official story for the very first time. The raid on Kef D's house was only the spark. The real explosion came days later when hundreds of pages of grand jury transcripts were suddenly unsealed without warning. Hidden inside those files was a shocking claim that set the internet on fire. Witnesses described a man, wrapped in bandages but fully conscious, boarding a private jet headed straight for Barbados just hours after the Vegas shooting. Those same transcripts said the man matched Shakur's build, his voice, even his one-of-a-kind presence. If that was real, it meant everything we thought we knew. The hospital scene, the 6-day vigil, the cameras, the tears, could have been nothing more than an elaborate setup, a staged curtain call. And suddenly the once laughed-at confession from Michael Nice in 2018 didn't sound so crazy anymore. Nice claimed he was part of a secret team, saying they pulled off the escape with help from the Black Panthers and even blessing from Fidel Castro himself. He swore they arranged a body switch, that Cuba opened its doors to let Shakur disappear for good. And just when he said he'd drop proof, boom, he vanished without a trace. Another loose end in a case already tangled with too many of them. And there's something chilling about the symmetry. Shakur's mother, Afeni Shakur, once stood tall in a New York courtroom defending herself, pregnant with him at the time. It's like his whole story was built on survival and mystery from the very beginning. Afeni Shakur, a fierce Black Panther, once accused, alongside the Panther 21, of plotting to bomb police stations, stood her ground and beat every single charge. Weeks later, she gave birth to the son who'd grow up to rap about crack fiends and black queens. If Michael Nice's wild claims were true, could history really be repeating itself? The Panthers once again protecting their most famous son. Another Shakur slipping into exile, running from a system that's been trying to silence him from day one. That idea, that connection, is what keeps this whole theory alive. In the smoke, the secrets, the rumors, it's that old link between rebellion and revenge that refuses to die. But the big question remains, why would anyone want him gone in the first place?
Well, he was when he first approached me, he was very nice, very gentle, and a lot of people, the perception of that he had out there was a negative one. But he never, at once, anytime, gave me a negative perception of him.
The trail leads right back to Kef D. In interviews and his own words, both on tape and in print, he said Shakur's shooting was nothing more than collateral damage, a payback for what went down at the MGM Grand earlier that night when Tupac and his crew jumped Keffi's nephew, Orlando Anderson. It's all there in that grainy hotel footage. Fists flying, chaos breaking loose, security trying to pull them apart. He swore it wasn't about music, fame, or poetry, it was pure vengeance. But even he couldn't resist turning the drama up a notch. In his tell-all memoir, he dropped a bomb, claiming Sean Diddy Combs himself had allegedly offered a $1 million bounty on both Shakur and Suge Knight. That twist flipped everything. Suddenly, it wasn't just East Coast versus West Coast, it was Bad Boy versus Death Row. Music executives acting like generals while their artists became soldiers in a war way bigger than any record deal. And Diddy, he's always shut that talk down hard, calling the whole thing pure fiction and completely ridiculous. Still, the whispers keep circling, refusing to fade away. Keffe D's version of the story takes an even darker turn. He paints a picture of a secret meeting in Los Angeles. Quiet room, heavy air, and $1 million sitting on the table. Then came the words that still echo through the conspiracy. "Man, I want to get rid of them dudes." That's what Keffe claims Diddy said. The timing of it all, straight up chilling. Just a year before the Vegas shooting, the Source Awards had already set the stage for war. The night was pure chaos. Suge Knight stood before a roaring crowd and threw the ultimate shot saying, "Any artist out there that want to be a star and don't want the executive producer all in the videos dancing, come to death row." That jab hit like a live grenade, and everyone in that room knew exactly who he was talking about. Months later, Shakur dropped Hit 'Em Up, a diss track so ruthless it torched every bridge left standing. If Keffe D's claims carry even a shred of truth, that $1 million bounty didn't just come out of nowhere. It was born from ego, humiliation, and the raw fury of the most toxic rivalry in hip-hop history. Pride was on the line, reputations were bleeding, and revenge was already in motion. And then, nearly 3 decades later, we're back to that 2023 raid. Federal agents tearing through a quiet Nevada home, flipping it inside out. They seized hard drives, bullets, a Vibe magazine, and that tell-all memoir. Now the shadow of Diddy himself looms over everything, with lawsuits, new raids, and investigations closing in. If Tupac Shakur really slipped out of Vegas alive that night, the real question burns hotter than ever. Who helped make it happen? Who got paid? Who stayed silent? And who still holds the truth locked away? The raid photos look frozen in time. Officers hauling out boxes packed with photos, tubs of evidence, and that haunting Vibe magazine cover with Shakur's piercing eyes staring straight through the lens. It's like he's daring the world to look deeper. And after almost 30 years, one question still won't die. If the world really believed he was gone, who actually stood to gain from the illusion? Because maybe Shakur's so-called exit wasn't just the closing scene of a bloody rap war. Maybe it was something way colder, something far bigger than a feud between record labels or a few hot tempers on a Vegas strip. What happened that night wasn't just tragedy. It was a power play, a test of how far influence, money, and silence could go when the truth became inconvenient. That night didn't just take a life, it shaped a legacy. The system turned Tupac Shakur into a myth, a symbol larger than the man himself. Yet here we are, still watching that same system twist itself in knots, chasing shadows, trying to rewrite history. The stakes didn't fade, they just kept climbing higher and higher. Then came the summer of 2023. As the FBI wrapped its high-profile raid on Keffe D's home, another storm hit. This time at the mansions of Sean Diddy Combs. Doors busted open, headlines screaming, human trafficking probe, and stories flying about wild parties, hush money, and secret payoffs. It felt straight out of an LA noir movie. Luxury, danger, and scandal colliding in broad daylight. Behind every blurry photo of agents dragging out boxes, evidence bags stuffed with hard drives, diaries, and diamond-studded watches, there's that same uneasy question pulsing through it all. How deep does this really go?
I think that they don't want, if they was in any of those freak-off tapes, if they played a part in any of those Diddy sessions, they don't want it to get out to the general public to make up their...
The timing couldn't look more suspicious. 2 men, 2 raids, 1 hot summer, and somehow every trail circles back to the same Vegas crossroads where it all began. Was the FBI just lining up cases on a billionaire mogul for show, or were they tracing something way deeper, a thread they've been quietly pulling for years? The silence around it all feels deafening. That question hangs heavy while Keffe D sits in county lockup, finally indicted after decades of walking free. The official version claims it's all about revenge, that punch thrown inside the MGM Grand. But now, with every major player suddenly under a microscope, the whole thing starts to look less like a revenge plot and more like a carefully staged distraction. Maybe Tupac's shooting wasn't an ending at all. Maybe it was the perfect smokescreen. A headline big enough to hypnotize the world while real moves, the kind that never make it to the news, were going down behind closed doors. It's like watching an empire tear itself apart from the inside. Even retired FBI agent Phil Carson said it straight. As soon as somebody has handcuffs on them, they'll sell out their own mom. That line hits hard, because this time, it doesn't sound like a threat. It sounds like a promise. The old street code of silence, gone. Everyone's talking now, and nobody wants to be the last one holding secrets that could burn them. And here's the wild part, Keffe D keeps saying the money never showed. He swears his crew never got the supposed $500,000 payout Diddy allegedly promised for the job. No wire transfers, no duffel bags, no cash stacks, nothing. So if nobody got paid, where did that money go? While all this unfolds, the man who allegedly called the shots built his empire on flash, fame, and pure excess. yachts drifting off Miami, penthouse parties dripping with champagne, and celebrity faces everywhere. But if you believe the growing stack of lawsuits, there were people at those parties who never should have been there in the first place. The whispers surrounding Diddy aren't whispers anymore. They've turned into alarms. One lawsuit even called it a modern-day Epstein operation, a chilling phrase that sent shockwaves across the industry. The FBI isn't just scooping up memorabilia or souvenirs this time. They're untangling an entire network of power, silence, and secrets. And for once, it feels like the walls aren't closing in on the pawns. They're closing in on the king himself. But as the new scandals stack up, the old ghosts keep creeping back. You can't talk about Shakur's disappearance without stumbling over the legacy of the Black Panthers, Assata Shakur, and decades of government surveillance. This story doesn't live in isolation. It's part of a much bigger web. Tupac's own mother, Afeni Shakur, gave birth just after beating federal charges meant to crush a movement that scared those in power. His aunt, Assata Shakur, has lived in exile in Cuba for decades, still wanted by the FBI, still a living symbol of everything the government tried and failed to erase back in the 70s. And every time new rumors pop up about Tupac sightings in Havana, blurry photos, locals claiming to hear a familiar voice, it keeps that fire alive. Could the legend really be living quietly in exile, just like the family that came before him? The Panther connection is what keeps this whole conspiracy breathing. Was Shakur's disappearance an act of rebellion, a final move by a man who refused to be owned? Or was it something darker, a quiet deal between legends, revolutionaries, and power players who saw him as just another pawn in their game? Politicians, record moguls, secret agents, all feeding off the chaos they helped create. From day one, Shakur's story wasn't just about music or fame. It was tangled up in the history of American resistance. Long before anyone whispered about a secret flight to Cuba, his bloodline was already at war with the system. His mother, Afeni Shakur, set the tone. She faced down the U.S. government in a courtroom built to crush her. In 1969, the FBI rounded up 21 Black Panthers, accusing them of plotting bomb attacks that could have locked each of them away for hundreds of years. And in the middle of that storm, Afeni stood there, 5 months pregnant, no law degree, no legal team, just raw courage and fire in her eyes. Her baby bump became a symbol, a challenge to the system that wanted to break her. She represented herself, fought the prosecutors head on, and she won. Afeni didn't just beat the case, she survived the impossible. Locked up on Rikers Island, she lived off a brutal diet of boiled eggs and milk, fighting just to get a court order for the nutrients she needed to keep her unborn son alive. He was in my stomach in the worst possible living condition, she later recalled, and those words hit like prophecy. From the womb, Tupac was already surviving battles most people couldn't even imagine. This wasn't just a story about family struggle, it was a full-blown masterclass in survival. Afeni Shakur didn't just endure the system, she flipped it on its head. She turned visibility into a weapon, using her own story to beat a system designed to break her spirit and destroy her body. The Shakur bloodline was forged inside the cracks of America's harshest prisons, born from pressure, pain, and defiance. Rikers Island wasn't just a backdrop, it was a proving ground. Every cell there had its own ghost, but Afeni turned hers into fire. That cell became a launching pad for the son who would grow up learning that freedom doesn't always mean walking free. Sometimes it means learning how to outthink the world, right in plain sight. Years later, Tupac himself would echo those same lessons. In his 1995 Vibe prison interview, locked up in Rikers just like his mother once was, he spoke with a sharpness that felt like prophecy. He said the old pack was gone. The chaos, the excuses, the hanger-ons, all buried. Talking to Kevin Powell, he sounded like a man carving his own gravestone, saying goodbye to one version of himself while preparing for a rebirth. He wasn't just talking about changing, he was talking about vanishing, rebuilding, resisting. Every word hinted at someone who had studied how to disappear when the world got too loud, and that's where the eerie symmetry hits. Both Afeni and Tupac stared down impossible odds and learned the same secret weapon, how to turn pain into power and vulnerability into legend. He once said, "You know, I wasn't never faced," and it felt like he was still finishing the story his mother started. Shakur's music carried that legacy in every single lyric. When he dropped Against All Odds in 1996, he wasn't just rapping, he was firing shots at a world built on illusion and performance. "I've been shot and I made it. Now you tell me how you fake it." That line hit like a punch to the chest. To most, it sounded like pure bravado. But to those who knew how to listen, it felt like a hidden message, a dare wrapped in rhythm. It was as if Tupac had mastered the same art his mother once used, the art of survival through misdirection. Just like Afeni had learned to use visibility as armor, her son seemed to understand that disappearing in plain sight could be the ultimate rebellion. Maybe vanishing wasn't weakness at all. Maybe it was resistance. Maybe survival wasn't about running. It was about outsmarting, outlasting, and flipping the narrative so that the system became the joke instead of the judge. Afeni's courtroom victory didn't just free her. It wrote a manual for how to beat power at its own game. And when people talk about the wildest theories, the Panther operation, the body switch, the whispers of escape, they sound less like fantasy and more like echoes of something deeply familiar. The blueprint had already been written decades earlier. In every court document from the Panther 21 trial, every yellow newspaper clipping about Rikers, every radio recording where Afeni's fierce resolve cut through static like prophecy.
As far as, is he going to turn people in? Is he going to cooperate? If the federal government wants him to cooperate and they're going to cut his time, because right now he's looking at 15 to life with all the charges he has to. He won't get out till 70 years old. He about 70. That's when they start talking about letting him come to a halfway house.
So maybe Shakur's so-called escape wasn't about fear. Maybe it was strategy. It wasn't cowardice. It was chess, not checkers. Because if Afeni could out-argue federal prosecutors and walk out from under a 300-year sentence, who's to say her son couldn't slip away from the world's spotlight right at the peak of his fame? Maybe that's why the whispers about Tupac just won't die down. It's never been only about him surviving that hail of bullets. It's about him carrying on a legacy. Every lesson Rikers ever forced into him, every courtroom strategy Afeni ever perfected, every time they turned defeat into fuel, all of it became part of his DNA. If Shakur really disappeared, maybe it wasn't because he was scared. Maybe it was because, just like his mother, he believed the system didn't deserve his surrender. The parallels between mother and son are haunting, almost cinematic. It doesn't just make for wild conspiracy talk. It makes this whole story feel like the second act of a drama that started decades before. In the Shakur family's world, victory was never about comfort or safety. It was about defiance. Afeni beat the system and rewrote herself into history, standing tall when the odds said she'd crumble. So maybe Tupac followed her script, rewriting his ending, vanishing on his own terms, and leaving us all searching for the next hidden move. Because in the Shakur legacy, escape and resistance have always been twins, two sides of the same fight. And maybe that's why the world's still waiting for one last twist, one final reveal that ties it all together. But as we dig deeper, things start to get even stranger. Diddy's name keeps resurfacing, louder, bolder, and harder to ignore each time. According to Keffe D's own police confessions and his memoir, Compton Street Legend, the plan wasn't what everyone thought. He claimed the Southside Crips were never supposed to be the ones holding the bag. The mission, he said, was crystal clear. Take out Suge Knight, take out Tupac Shakur, and collect that $1 million payoff. If that's true, then this story isn't just about betrayal. It's about money, power, and a plan that might have spiraled way beyond anyone's control. In the end, one man was lost, one man survived, and the money, that mysterious million, just vanished into thin air. The Southside Crips never saw their payday, but someone did. Someone with enough power to freeze investigations, bury evidence, and keep certain names far away from indictments for almost 30 years. Behind it all sits a web of lawsuits, quiet settlements, NDAS, and a media circus more obsessed with East Coast versus West Coast than the real question. Why did the investigation keep going cold? Whenever Diddy gets pressed on it, he leans on the same tired defense, calling it pure fiction and completely ridiculous. Maybe that worked once, but in 2023, with courtrooms craving real answers and high-profile names suddenly under the microscope, those old denials are starting to sound shaky, brittle even. It's like the walls are finally starting to crack. And through all the chaos, the world keeps circling back to the heartbreak, the human part of the legend. Mike Tyson, Iron Mike himself, has broken down remembering the last time he saw Tupac alive. His voice shakes when he says it. He was really happy after the fight. Then he left. That one line, short, heavy, and delivered with a cracked voice, lands like a hammer. The man everyone thought was unstoppable, the fighter, the poet, the rebel, walked out of Tyson's dressing room that night for what the world thought would be the last time. 7 days later, he was gone, or so we were told. The cameras mourned, the streets went silent, and behind the curtains, something else entirely was already unfolding. Now, the grand jury transcripts are public record. Keffe D's mugshot is everywhere. The pieces of the puzzle are out in the open. But the picture they form, that's what still keeps everyone guessing. Diddy's legal team is in overdrive, scrambling to stay ahead while the FBI's files keep stacking taller than ever. Every week, new leaks, new claims, new trails of evidence, and still, the unanswered questions just keep piling up faster than anyone can spin them away. For 27 years, Tupac Shakur's exit has been treated like a tragedy written in stone. the price of fame, violence, and ego. But now, with all these documents, testimonies, and confessions flooding the light, it's getting hard to believe this was ever just a random night gone wrong.
But I'm still a little suspicious about the timing and how it's all rolled out here.
It looks more and more like a transaction, a twisted deal built on debts, secrets, and betrayal dressed up as destiny. And here's the real gut punch. What if he made it? If Shakur survived that night, where is he now? Maybe he's somewhere in Havana, watching the circus from the shadows, laughing at how the world still can't let go. Maybe he's out there blending into crowds, waiting for the right moment to let the truth explode. But if he didn't make it, then who's been cashing in on the silence all this time? And how many powerful names would crumble if the full story ever saw daylight? Now, hold that image in your mind. Shakur's 1996 mugshot on one side, Kefe D's fresh booking photo on the other. Two faces locked across decades of lies, greed, and manipulation. Between them sits a trail of power plays, cover-ups, and buried truths that no one, not the labels, not the agents, not the moguls, actually wants solved. So here's the question we can't escape. What do you believe? Is Tupac out there sipping coffee somewhere in Cuba, watching history twist itself into a joke? Or was he buried by the same system that tried to erase his mother, his family, and everything they stood for? Drop your wildest theories below, because this story isn't cooling down. It's heating up fast. The deeper we dig, the darker it gets. This isn't just history, it's a mystery the world can't stop chasing. Until the truth finally breaks through, keep your eyes open, your mind sharp, and your guard all the way up. And that's where we leave it. For now, Tupac's story still pulses through the streets, through the headlines, and through every whispered theory that refuses to fade. Whether he's sipping coffee in Havana or forever immortalized by a system that couldn't contain him, one thing's for sure. The truth is still out there, hiding in plain sight. The legends, the lies, the power games, they all keep spinning, daring us to look closer. The deeper we dig, the more the line between fact and fiction blurs. And maybe that's exactly how he wanted it. Because in the world of Tupac Shakur, survival was never just about staying alive. It was about staying unforgettable. So what do you think really happened? Drop your thoughts in the comments, share your theories, and join the conversation. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, because the story's not over yet. Stay bold and stay curious, because in this world, nothing is what it seems.